Well, the latest developments making it clear that the US remains firmly focused on the Middle East, what's taking place in Gaza, but also new efforts being taken by Washington to prevent a huge loss of life in Rafah if Israel launches that planned ground offensive. Now, we know that the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken intends to go to both Saudi Arabia and Egypt. That's all part of those negotiations to find a temporary truce and also see the release of hostages in return for Palestinian prisoners that are being held by Israel. And on top of that, we are expecting an Israeli delegation here in Washington in the coming days, potentially as soon as the end of this week or early next week. That delegation was confirmed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a call with President Biden, during which they spoke about the upcoming offensive in Rafah. The US making it clear that it is very concerned about the possibility of that ground invasion, with more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah. They've obviously been displaced from other parts of the Gaza Strip, being forced south now to the lowest point of the Gaza Strip there on the border with Egypt. We heard from Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, detailing what took place in that phone call between the Israeli and US leaders. We're told that the US wants the Israelis to come here to hear the US concerns about that invasion of Rafah, but also because the US wants to lay out an alternative approach. Now, the US says that it's still right for Israel to try and find Hamas operatives that are in that area, but the US has alternatives that could come without a major ground invasion. So the US is very keen in what appears to be an increasing rift between the two leaders of the US and Israel to ensure that the humanitarian access is increased, but also mitigating the possibility of a huge loss of life if that ground offensive were to take place, as Israel says it plans to do. Nick Harper, SABC News, Washington.